Hi, welcome to the Supply Chain Management with GDP podcast, where we discuss industry best practices, current affairs, effective leadership, and the latest innovations in the world of supply chain. Aimed at explaining the concepts of supply chain in the leanest way possible, comes one of the most efficient and quickest shows where you will listen to interviews with various subject matter experts in the supply chain domain. So let's just get right into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Supply Chain Management with GDP. Today, we have with us someone who, in the software supply chain space, has been immensely experienced and been there for a number of years. She's currently working at Tive Incorporated and continue to drive actions in the supply chain world. So let me give the space to her and introduce herself. Shawna?
Hi, Gagan. Yes, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your podcast. I think this is very exciting, and anytime we can reach a broader community in supply chain and share knowledge and all that, it's pretty exciting stuff. So thank you so much for inviting me. So my name is Shawna Baker, and I have been in the supply chain software space for many years. I don't want to date myself and say exactly how many, but quite a bit. And I've had what I call certainly an eclectic background, just in different parts of supply chain, different size enterprises, and so on. So it's been an interesting journey, and hopefully I have some fun and maybe useful information I can share with your audience today.
That's amazing. I'm really honored to have you on our podcast because you're someone who can guide a lot of professionals, young students who are trying to get into the supply chain, and would be wonderful to hear where our conversation goes today.
Sure, absolutely.
Let me get into the first question that I have for today is what does Tive actually do and why did you decide to take up the challenge at Tive?
Sure. I love that question. And actually, it's all very fresh because I'm relatively new to Tive. So it's pretty exciting, actually. Let me back up a little bit, and if you don't mind, I'll answer that question with a little bit more background from my history because it's actually all tying together really well,
Sure.
and it explains how I got to Tive. So at the start of my career, I just sort of happened in supply chain, and that's actually pretty common, at least the folks around my age. That's a pretty common answer that they just kind of happened into it. Whereas now universities are certainly offering a supply chain management focus, and so it's a little bit different, right? You have people coming into the workforce now that this is their focus degree, which is pretty cool. And I started out with a small tech startup company that they were offering kind of a niche solution to life science companies. And basically what it had to do with, if you think about the complex manufacturing process of pharmaceuticals, for example, there's a lot of activities that have to happen on the manufacturing plant floor. And so they developed a program to help automate a lot of that. And that was a small tech startup company. The CEO had reached out to me directly, and that was my entry point into supply chain software. From there, I pivoted and went to a software company that was kind of, I would call them mid-size. They were not a large enterprise type company, but they were bigger than startup. They had been around for about 7 years, and they had a focus in the chemical supply chain space. That's kind of where I got basically the most of my experience. The company name was Alemica, and I was also blessed to have many different roles there, Alemica, from doing things like analyst relations and working with the likes of Gartner and Laura Ciceri. So it was great. I basically summarized that as kind of an end-to-end view of customer acquisition and everything involved in acquiring customers and building business. So Alemica, again, mid-size. From there, I moved on to a much larger company. GT Nexus was acquired by Infor, which is like a 17,000 person company, and much different, right? Really, really big company. Again, still in the software space, still helping supply chain companies solve complex supply chain problems. From there, I went back to kind of a mid-sized company more around the same size as Alemica. But the cool thing in all of this is that I also got exposure across different parts of the supply chain, like solving different parts of the supply chain puzzle. So now I'm getting to your actual question, which is how did I end up at Tive? Tive got my attention a few months back. They started to come out really because they're addressing a huge need in the market today, which is, how granular can we get with the data to truly understand where our product is? And is the product condition in any way compromised? Is it safe? Has it arrived on time, in the right amount, in the right condition, right? And they do that through trackers that we've developed. And they just got my attention. They pushed the market with technology as far as the actual tracker devices. And they're able to provide data that's critical in today's world. So I sent the CEO of Tive a note. I said, I really like what you guys are doing and I'd like to work for you. And that kind of kicked off the process. And here I am.
Wow. Just one word to describe your experiences, that's impressive. But just by hearing of it and such a combination of experience, you're such an invaluable asset to any company that you work for.
I
Just,
really appreciate that.
yep,
My one word is eclectic, and I
yep.
think it's a little bit of everything, right? I think that's good. I've never really been one to focus in on one particular talent and be stellar, right? I could never do the Olympics. It's just not for me.
Yep.
But
So you have an experience all the way from being on ground at a manufacturing level or trying to understand technology as it's growing in supply chain. Over the years, how can you say that the evolution of technology has impacted the supply chain industry?
it has been interesting to kind of watch the evolution while at the same time working in supply chain technology, right? So if you think back to where digital, first started to surface and come about, companies adopted technology to basically enhance their operations internally. So ERP, for example. Well, fast forward, to today and, rising out of the most chaotic time I think that supply chain has ever seen with the pandemic and the bullwhip effect on the pandemic on supply chain, digital technologies now are an imperative. And so is visibility. And so you start with the problem at hand, and then you figure out what do you need visibility into and what digital technologies and innovative technologies, edge technologies are out there that can help solve this problem. So you went from 10, 15 years ago, companies implementing these massive technologies. And most of them, by the way, planning back then was on premise, right? Meaning it's an instance of the program. Well, now everything is interconnected. And really, the direction that we're going in now is how can we have more data sharing and interconnectivity among our technologies that can help us be more efficient and trade with each other and see where the shipments are. There's so many parties involved in the shipment of one product that it's mind-boggling to the average person. Visibility is so critical, and the more granular you can get into the data, the more useful it becomes. So that's one of the trends. And then of course it's making use of all the data that's out there now in the data lakes and breaking down these silos that exist not only internally in our own companies but externally with your trade partners.
When you talked about how supply chain is linked everywhere, it seems like a trend that I'm hearing a lot in the supply chain world is that before supply chain used to be such a linear platform, now it's more a circular where everything connects with each other, where the starting and the ending meet together. And also, you mentioned a lot about visibility of information. So, my next question is based off that. How important do you think it is for clients or customers to have higher visibility of data or information? And how can supply chain companies enable it moving forward?
I might change your word a little bit. It's not about higher visibility. It's about what type of visibility do you need. And so, it is a little bit of it's a challenge for companies to navigate the technology provider space. And visibility is so important. It does become this sort of, enormous project of, oh gosh, how do we solve this problem? There's so many providers on the market. And then a lot of companies that work, they know what's within their four walls, but they don't know what they don't know. And so technology providers like a Tive or like, a Nexus or like any other provider on the market, they're very good at what they do and what they offer. And so they do bring a lot of expertise to the table and information that sometimes can help, folks in supply chain learn, right? So we're solving these problems together. My take on this whole thing, and a bit of a vision too, is that we break away from antiquated methodologies like RFIs, right? Requests for information, requests for quotes. That's okay in certain applications, but when it comes to evaluating software providers, that's not the best way to go about it, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't even know what questions to ask. So it is about research. I would say if you have a centers of excellence or, an innovation or even edge technology focused group or digital group in your organization, task them with, going to market and trying to find a solution to the very specific problem. It starts with defining your specific problem and then kind of engineering out from there. But yeah, I think we need to break away from old processes and old mindsets and be open to partnering where it might make sense, and then just finding the right provider for the right problem at hand. Visibility is so critical because you can't control what you can't see. And now it's not even a problem of harnessing the data from an external source. We all have the data, the data might be there now, right? Companies have all these data lakes from their siloed systems. Now it's, well, how do I get that data? How do I slice and dice it and access it, slice and dice it, use it, and get the insights that I need to better my operations and my business? And that's where AI and ML is coming in, right? Now you're applying AI and ML technology to make use of the data that you have. And then you can uncover potentially more gaps where you need to get data, for example, from the product source. And so having a tracker on the movement of your product in transit in real time to ensure the efficacy and the viability of your product, or to make sure it wasn't stolen, to make sure a truck didn't deviate, to make sure the temperature is correct in the middle of the truck as well as at the back of the truck. There's all sorts of, technology out there that exists to really truly get granular. And the whole idea behind supply chain, the whole concept of it is so that that shipment arrives on time, in full, and at the right time and without compromise, right? The product is not compromised. So that's what we're all aiming for.
Yep. I think you were extremely spot on in most of your answer, but especially one place where you said we have to be adaptable to changes. And I think as a supply chain, as an industry, we struggle a lot with that. And there's a lot of buzzwords being thrown out, ML, AI, but everyone is so comfortable in just the old format, how it's working. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to listen to another episode of Supply Chain Management with GDP. We will be back continuing our conversation with Shawna Baker next week. Till then, take care and good night. Hi, welcome to the Supply Chain Management with GDP podcast, where we discuss industry best practices, current affairs, effective leadership, and the latest innovations in the world of supply chain.